head teachers and educational psychologists and authors and bloggers, and is Helen Garnett's written a book on early years and empathy. So it's really special to have you with us and have you joining us on the day we've announced the pretty amazing author lineup for Empathy Day on the 10th of June. So I'm Miranda McKerney, I'm one of Empathy Lab's founders, and this is a quick blast 45-minute event to share our plans with you in more depth than we could possibly have done on a social media launch this morning. And whether you're a journalist, a blogger, an author, national organisation or grassroots practitioner, we hope to inspire you to get extremely involved and help us spread a new empathy movement and using Empathy Day as rocket fuel. So as well as the what, we wanted to focus on the why. So we'll be hearing from two experts, a psychologist and a head teacher, about their reasons for believing empathy is especially important right now. Then I'll quickly outline Empathy Day's plans, including a sneak preview of one author's empathy walk, because walking in other people's shoes is the theme of the day. And at the end, there's time for questions, as we very much want to hear from you. So Sarah Mears, my fellow founder, give us a wave, Sarah, is in charge of the questions, and please do put them in chat as we go along. But also, if something suddenly occurs to you at the end, it's absolutely fine to just ask a question when we get to the questions. So we founded Empathy Day 5 years ago, and my goodness, it really has just exploded. And just a tiny bit of background, we're a small not-for-profit social enterprise. We're largely run by volunteers, and we passionately believe that empathy is a core life skill, a life skill that every child needs and not a fluffy thing, and that it's a powerful catalyst for a better future, the root of real understanding and real kindness. And we're just going to go through a few slides. So Laura, if we can start now. Our overall aim is to raise an empathy educated generation, young people inspired to lead a new empathy movement, building a less divided world, a generation who we aim to take on this journey from knowing what empathy is right through to putting it into action. And in doing so, that young people are happier, who go on to become wonderful citizens and parents at the heart of building strong communities and a more civil society. And we think a lot about what levers society has to raise an empathy educated generation. And lab-like, we've been experimenting with lots of different interventions, but our programme has now settled into 4 main areas. An annual Read for Empathy book collection with 50 books for 4 to 16-year-olds supported by Peters, and an in-depth whole school empathy education programme. Plus an innovation group we're very excited about called the Empathy Circle. These 9 publishers are supporting us to build Empathy Day's impact, and with authors we're trialling new types of events. And just today we're fresh from an author empathy masterclass. That's not to say we aren't supported by a great many other publishers as well, and we're particularly pleased to have small publishers with us today. But those ones I've just shown you are giving us some funding and practical support to move things forward. So our strategy is based on 2 key areas of scientific research. Firstly, that empathy is learnable. We're not just born with a fixed quantity. Only 10% of our empathic ability is genetic, and 98% of us are capable of learning new empathy skills at any point in our lives, with the caveat that it's best learned as young as possible. I find this incredibly challenging and very inspiring. The second area is a building body of research, much of it neuroscience, showing that because of how our brains work when we read, identifying with the feelings of book characters helps build our real life understanding of other people. And it was this body of research that inspired Empathy Lab to get going. I just find this so cool. So Empathy Day aims to help young people learn more about empathy, have transformational literature-based empathy experiences, and be inspired to put their new insights into action so that every day is an empathy day. In fact, it aims to help us all understand each other better and to spark a much needed debate about how on earth we can build a more empathic society. And my goodness, if ever there was a time to be focusing on empathy, it surely has to be now. The pandemic and Black Lives Matter movement have shown how different, how often unequal people's lives are, and how important it is that we understand what other people are going through, and how powerful it is when we act on that and look out for each other. We've seen a wave of community caring, offering precious building blocks for a better future. And I find it fascinating that empathy is now explicitly in the political discourse. This "people have chosen empathy" sign was what the Democrats chose to put on the stage the night they won the election. A message of hope about empathy helping us be our best selves, an antidote to our worst tribal instincts in the other picture. So now from me, straight over to Robin, who is head of psychology at Sussex University, one of those people that you are just so glad to have by your side. So Robin, over to you to talk about your views on why empathy is especially important at the moment.
Thank you so much, Miranda. What a lovely introduction. And it's such a pleasure to be by your side as well, and by the whole team of Empathy Lab side on this project. It's been a fantastic journey. I've been involved with Empathy Lab more or less from its inception, really, but very early in its in the development of the organization. And it's been just such a pleasure to work with you. So just a bit of background, I am head of psychology at Sussex. My own specific research experience and expertise is in the area of social and emotional development. I'm a developmental psychologist working with children and young people, and I've got a real interest in relationships and well-being of children and young people, particularly in the educational context in schools. And I think, you know, when I first heard about the work that Empathy Lab was beginning to do, it just resonated with me. It really just made sense to me, because it's like this beautiful fit, you know, putting together reading, stories, really beautiful, moving books that are out there with empathy and social action, and is really encapsulated in the wonderful Read, Connect, Act. That simplicity of putting those things together just really resonated with me. And from the very beginning, I've just been absolutely blown away by it. And like Miranda's been saying, there is really good science behind this. It's very, very clear from growing evidence that reading stories has the potential to really nurture empathy, that this is not something which is just residing inside an individual child, just given as part of their sort of genetic inheritance. The environment matters. What we do with children and young people matters. The opportunities we give them really matter. And reading books and stories is a really important part of children's lives. Reading with them, talking with them, exploring characters' emotional states, understanding what's happening. These are all the foundations of being able to share each other's feelings, to understand each other's feelings, and importantly, to care about each other's feelings, care about them enough to act. And that's why the kind of link with social action seems to me to be really important, because actually empathy is like the glue that connects people together. It's the bond that enables our relationships to flourish. And of course, once you do that, once you're able to develop those relationships with other people, once you've got that skill, and empathy really is a vital life skill, once you've got that skill to nurture relationships through empathy, then actually you're boosting your own well-being and you're boosting the well-being of the other people around you as well. So, you know, as a psychologist, I'm really passionately focused on supporting the mental health and well-being of everybody in the educational context in schools and out in the community as well. And I think Empathy Lab really, really speaks to that. So to my mind, this is about putting together a growing body of scientific research on reading and empathy, together with the ubiquitous presence of books in our lives and stories in our lives which move us every single day. So I'm just absolutely honored and privileged to be part of the journey with Empathy Lab. We're actually working together very actively on research projects, and I'm excited about Empathy Day and everything that it will bring over the coming year as well. So thank you again for inviting me to be part of it, Miranda.
Oh, bless you, Robin. And do you want to just say a few words about why you think it might be especially important right now?
Well, I think you're absolutely right to flag that, because in the past, 12, 13 months, we've just been going through the most extraordinary set of circumstances, which have really made us question, actually, what are the things which really matter? What are the things which really count in our lives? And we've also had to make some really difficult decisions about priorities. What do we put in front of other things? And I think empathy, and you have that lovely example from the American political scene as well. I think empathy has entered into public discourse in a way that we haven't seen for a long time, because people are asking what really counts. And of course, what really counts is each other, right? It's about being human, and empathy is about being human, making that connection with other people. And to my mind, it's like the Read, Connect, Act, that simplicity of the message of Empathy Lab. As I often say, Miranda, right? It's simple and complex at the same time. But that simplicity of the message has never been more important than now.
Great. Thank you very much, Robin. It's really lovely to have you with us. And you're so practically involved with us. We're running an author masterclass tomorrow, and you're speaking to the authors. So I think that cross-weaving, that sort of cross-disciplinary weaving the creative world of books in with the psychology knowledge is just so important.
Absolutely.
So we're going to hear now from Sonia Thompson, who is head teacher at St Matthew's School, primary school in Birmingham. And Sonia is one of those amazing people who just, those incredible people who seem to be able to be sort of have superpowers of writing blogs and running a school and being active on Twitter and helping us judge our Read for Empathy book collection. So Sonia, you're a bit of a wonder, and we're very pleased to have you with us, particularly now. So over to you.
Thank you, Miranda. Oh, a lovely introduction. Thank you so much. And of course, in a similar vein to Robin, a real pleasure to be part of Empathy Lab, Empathy Day. I think what really stood out for me as a head teacher of both a teaching and a research school was the research base that Robin talked about. And it lends itself really, really well to our school's emphasis on research-informed practice. So it really appeals to us on that level. Empathy also appeals to us on the level that we are a school that really does emphasise reading for pleasure. Really, reading for pleasure is the heartbeat of our schools. So this idea of story, empathy, and actually empowering children to really unpick their emotions through storytelling is so powerful. I think being part of the judging panel and having an opportunity and a privilege of reading all of the books, it is really, really, as I said, a privilege to do it, because it's the opportunity that brings together head teachers, informed teachers, librarians, journalists, and other reading experts that are involved with other organisations such as CLPE. And it's that opportunity to sit around and really unpick what is the empathy thread within this book. And we are very rigorous within this prestigious panel that I've got the privilege of being part of. We are very rigorous in terms of what is that thread. So books need to be really, really strong in terms of making the cut and being part of that curated list, that robustly curated list of books that really will offer the schools the opportunities to work with their children to unpick the many facets of empathy, linked to characters, linked to settings, linked to conversations within books, linked to illustrations and the way that authors use illustrations to really emphasize particular elements of empathy, and the diversity of the choices of books. That's what we've really looked for as well. And bringing all of that together has been a really powerful opportunity for me to be part of. So again, Miranda, thank you for that. I think one of the things that we've certainly emphasized is when I'm working with, on empathy with my children in school, one of the things we really want our children to get to grips with is this idea that it's less of me, and children are, of course, very much about me. This is about me, this is mine. And what we want our children to really think about is we're part of a we community, we're part of a community, we're part of a world, we're part of a society that really needs us to think about others. Miranda and Robin, you've already talked about just the complications of living in this world, the emotions that we've gone through over the past 18 and 13 months. It's been a roller coaster for schools, it's been a roller coaster for parents, and I think parents have really empathized with us as teachers, as educators. They've seen into our world and been part of our world. We've gone into their homes and seen the things that they've had to deal with as well. And I think it's been a really reciprocal, empathetic relationship over the past 18 months for all of us in terms of children and education. And I think books, certainly for us as a school, certainly at St Matthew's, has been at the heart of that. And one of the things I've been really proud of is my children have, over time, have been just more and more compelled to action, not just about, oh, we sympathize with people, we've read that and we feel happy, we feel sad, but actually being compelled to do things. Children have knocked on my door on a regular basis, and you can talk to any member of my staff will back this up, that children have knocked on my door and said, can we collect for this? Can we do something about this? Can we write something about this? Because they've been compelled to act, to connect, and then to act. And I think that's really, really important. So I think for me, Empathy Lab and the work that they do is something that it's crucial, it's critical that we all get behind it and really drive forward empathy as a movement within our schools and make space for it. My goodness, we'll all be better for it if we make space for empathy within our schools. And as I said, I've certainly seen the benefits of that.
Oh, Sonia, thank you. That's just absolutely wonderful. I just couldn't be prouder that you two are Robin and Sonia amongst a quite extraordinary group of expert advisors to us. It means the world to us. Thank you. So more about Empathy Day plans. So I'm just going to whiz you through some slides. The theme, as I said, is walking in somebody else's shoes, emphasizing the importance of perspective taking at this time when we've all been, as they say, in that same storm, but in such very different boats. So the day has three main calls to action. Read. We're urging everyone to boost their empathy by reading. And we're aiming to create a kind of mass crowdsourced sharing of Read for Empathy recommendations. Connect. To make a special effort to really connect with the experiences and feelings of those around you, with Empathy Walks as the headline action. And act, using your Empathy Day insights to act to make a difference, as Sonia has been talking about, enshrining your intentions in an empathy resolution. The centerpiece is the online Empathy Day Live Festival, and this is very much not an ordinary literary festival. The activities have been created, a lot of them by my fellow founder, Sarah, who I do really pay tribute to, using a cross-disciplinary blend of research and psychology insights, practical testing in schools, with authors acting as empathy role models. And the festival harnesses the power of our amazing children's writers and illustrators. And here is the glorious lineup. And I really do think we're in a golden age of children's literature in the UK at the moment. And we've curated an author-illustrator-led approach, firstly because, of course, they're the creators of those characters that build us readers real-life empathy. And secondly, because they just have this absolutely electric effect on children. So when they're talking about empathy being important and leading these activities, they're championing empathy in a really profound way. So the day is launched by Children's Laureate Cressida Cowell, alongside young people from Sonia's school and Swansea's Pentrhavod school. And it's structured into those 3 calls to action: read, connect, act, with short bursts of author and illustrator-led activities. And these can be streamed live into homes, classrooms, libraries, or watched afterwards. And woven through the day is an emphasis on building specific empathy skills. So Jacqueline Wilson is giving some great tips for good listening. And A.M. Dasu and Adisa are leading a session curated by author Jo Cotterill on how we can use the power of mirroring each other's body language to help us better understand somebody else's emotions. The day is so rich that I don't have time to go through every event, so I'm just going to single out a few highlights. And the full programme is obviously on our website and on Twitter. Here's the read section, which has a gorgeous author's secret session with Mallory Blackman, Bally Rye and Holly Bourne, sharing how they actually go about creating those empathy boosting characters. It's such a thing to be able to do. How do they do it? And Bally starts by looking into his character's fridge. This section also features Rob Biddulph doing a special draw along exploring emotions. The main activity in the Connect section, in the next slide, Laura, is to go on an empathy walk. So we want everyone, including, if you would, all of you, to go on a walk with the intention of walking in others' shoes, just around your local community, really noticing people and situations that inspire your empathy. Then to read around the things you might have noticed, like a homeless person, and make an empathy resolution to change things. And authors showcasing their walk include Michael Morpurgo, Patrice Lawrence, Jane Porter, and Joseph Coelho. Communities will be deeply involved on the day in walks and lots of other ways, and they're represented by a library session from Hillingdon Libraries called Paper Doll Dilemmas. And this is a craft session which will help children explore their emotions through craft. And just to show you what we mean about the walks, here's a clip, short clip from A.M. Dasu's walk. Thanks, Laura.
Hi everyone, I'm Az, also known as A.M. Dasu, and I write both non-fiction and fiction children's books, including my middle grade novel, Boy Everywhere, which you can see the cover for behind me. And I'm really happy to be here with you today. Now, as you know, Empathy Day is coming up soon, and empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. And it's about putting yourself in the shoes of another person. And for Empathy Day, we've all been asked to note down what we saw on an empathy walk. So today, me and my children walked out of our front door around our neighbourhood with our empathy lenses on. And we noted down our insights and what we felt. So I'm going to share them with you now. But I'm also going to show you a map that my daughter drew after we got back of what we noticed. So if you have a good look over here, you'll see all the little things that we saw. We carried on walking back towards our house. We've sort of done a big loop now, and we passed an old lady with shopping bags. She was struggling because those bags were heavy. And we were really tempted to ask her, you know, if she needed help, but then we wondered how that might make her feel. Would she be glad of the help because they were too heavy, or would she feel offended that we'd assumed that she couldn't cope with something that she does regularly? So we didn't say anything. And then closer to our home, we heard some crying. And as we turned the corner, we saw a little toddler who had fallen over and he was crying, and his mummy was peeling back his trousers to check if he had a graze. And we wondered how he was feeling because he seemed so upset. You know, would he run off again? Was he, you know, would he hold his mummy's hand because he was worried about falling now? You know, had it put him off? And with them was a baby in a pram. And it was a sort of a flat pram, so it could only sort of see right up above. And we wondered what the baby was thinking. Was she, you know, was she looking at the sky? Did she know what the sky was? She could hear her baby brother, her older brother crying and her mum talking. Did she want to get involved? Did she feel excluded? So those are the sorts of things that we noticed, and we thought about how all of these people might be thinking and feeling. And when we got back, we also made an empathy resolution. And that was to stop and think about how someone might be feeling when they're acting in this strange or unusual way. So I decided that when my son cries about having to go for a walk, for example, instead of telling him that he has to come because he hasn't been out for a few days to get some fresh air, I will try to think about why he might not be so keen and try to understand and put myself in his shoes and before I try to explain and convince him that it's a good idea. So that was our empathy walk, and that was our empathy resolution. This is the map again of that my daughter drew, all the things we saw, and we hope that you have a brilliant empathy walk too, and we can't wait to see your entries and what you share. So have a great day and see you soon. Take care, bye.
So we want hundreds, thousands of children and adults doing walks. And I think that gives you a kind of flavour of them. In the ACT section, Welsh children and young people from Swansea and Pembroke Dock share their work on putting empathy into action in their communities. And they'll be talking to writer Kwame Alexander about empathy as an antidote to prejudice, and to the Welsh Children's Laureate Eloise Williams about its power to combat loneliness. And Jay Hume, Patrice Lawrence and Michelle Robinson will model an activity which helps us learn more about each other through a mini empathy exhibition of their most precious possessions, and what it kind of tells them about each other. The daytime events culminate with writers Rashmi Surdesh Pandey and Nathan Bryan leading everyone and in completing and sharing their empathy resolutions. And Rashmi, thank you so much for coming tonight. It's really lovely to have you with us. Finally, early that evening, there's the empathy conversation. We need a new debate about empathy and how to build a more empathetic society, and this contributes to that. So it will have Robin with us and authors Michael Rosen, Catherine Johnson and David Baddiel, whose books all feature in our 2021 collection. And you can imagine what it means to us to have Michael join us after all he's been through this year. The run-up to the day is also important, with schools, libraries and early years settings using our resources to learn more about empathy and take part in perspective-taking activities, like empathy takeovers, where children take on the role of different adults at school, or empathy wall of fame displays featuring celebrity role models so great at empathy like Marcus Rashford. You can see our free toolkits here. We want every school to have those and be enacting Empathy Day. There's an early years toolkit, and there is a family activities pack, which is crucial. On May the 11th, we launched this, and it has 10 empathy boosting things to do at home. To ensure every child has access to empathy boosting stories, alongside the family pack on May the 11th, we launch Empathy Shorts, original 500-word stories, in one case a play script, in another a rhyme video donated by these amazing authors. I can't wait to share these with you. They're just superb. One in last week explored how very differently things might have turned out if Little Red Riding Hood had just listened more empathetically to the wolf. Illustration, finally, plays a vital role in helping children understand the feelings of others. And in Countdown Week, we're honoured to be launching 9 brilliant Read for Empathy illustrations from some of our finest illustrators. So goodness, that is a real whistle-stop tour. And before we take questions, my final slides ask, please will you join us? We'd just love to enlist you all as empathy comrades in arms, whether that's inspiring your local school to take part or spreading the word through media coverage. Here's our Twitter handles. We'd really love to hear from you. Empathy can be such a powerful force for good, for change. And it would be wonderful if you could help us create an absolute empathy sonic boom on June the 10th. And then let's work together to make sure every day is an empathy day. Thank you. So Sarah, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Miranda, and thanks for that. And yeah, I've been looking at all the comments coming through as we've been listening to Miranda and Sonia and Robin speaking, and there's a huge amount of love for the programme, which is brilliant, a huge amount of love for Sonia and a huge amount of love for Robin. So thank you so much. And I think people loved your walk, and Desu. I think it was lovely to see it, and it really made us, when we saw that walk coming in, our kind of vision for the walk suddenly became real, and it was so exciting to see it. So thank you for sharing that with us. So we've got some questions in the chat, and one of them is actually from Joe Cotterill for Robin. Joe, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, let me find it because I thought about it and wrote it carefully and now I can't remember what it was. Okay, oh yeah, so actually, Robin, this is helping me because I have to write a blog for Empathy Day to be hosted. So actually, it's very good I've got you right here, right now. So my question is, would you say that empathy is the most useful skill you could teach a child? If I brought you a child, any random child, and I said, what could you give this child, one thing that would help them throughout their life? And, you know, you could consider literacy and numeracy and self-confidence and, you know, a loving family, all of those things. How important is empathy in that hierarchy?
Wow, that's such a great question, Joe. Thank you so much. Oh, it keeps moving around on my screen. Oh, there you are, Joe. Fantastic. Fantastic.
I'm going to be taking notes, so please provide soundbites.
Okay, so quick answer is yes, it's really, really important, and I think it's foundational. I think your idea that actually empathy can lead on to so many other things, can open doors to so many other things, is absolutely spot on. But the really, really good news that I want to say in response to your question is that this is not a trade-off. That this isn't a case of saying that it has to be prioritized or it has to come first. It's not about sequencing it in a way that you have to do this first and then the other things will follow. One of the real beauties of Empathy Lab's work, and which really connects with the research in this area, is that you can build empathy while working on all of those other things as well. Whether it's work on literacy, which is of course absolutely right at the heart of the work of Empathy Lab through the engagement with books and stories, but outside of that as well, whether it's work on numeracy or PE or drama, actually empathy can be the skill which you're building on in tandem with all of those other things. You know, it's one of the things that I always feel is like a little bit of a frustration when I focus on mental health and well-being and social and emotional competencies, especially something like empathy in a school setting, is that people say, yes, that would be really nice, but I've got all this other stuff to do as well. Yeah. I've got the kind of academic standards agenda to focus on. And my response always is, it's not a trade-off. It's not that you focus on one or the other.
Yeah.
Actually, you build empathy through every interaction that you have with a child or young person. And it's actually beneficial for you as well, because it's like what I was saying before, it's about human relationships. And I think that's a really important message for us all to take away, that every interaction that we have with children and young people has the potential to build empathy, and also it has a potential to thwart it as well. And we've got to make sure that we create environments which support that need to build empathy.
Thank you. That leads me on to another question, but I'll save it until the end in case anyone else has got any more.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Jo. Thank you, Robin. Mari, you had a question about, I guess, reading for pleasure and reading for empathy, I think, for Sonia. Do you want to just unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, Sonia, the way you described your school, the way you spoke, you said that reading for pleasure was the heartbeat of your school, which is just beautiful. And I was just wondering how long that culture had taken to with such confidence that you said that. How long had it taken you to feel that about your school?
I think it's a never-ending thing, but certainly we've been working on it for a good 10 years now. And I think for me, one of the things that I always say is that we've put reading for pleasure into our school improvement plan every single year, so that you are held accountable by your governors to move it forward, to invest in it, to make sure that the outcomes are there, that children are wanting to read, and that children have got agency. And I think it's really important that reading for pleasure and reading for empathy are driven by leadership teams. It's really great to have passionate and enthusiastic teachers within schools, but I always think that if that teacher ever leaves, they take that passion and enthusiasm with them. Yeah. And it's about the leadership driving it, because they see it as important. They see it as social justice. They see it as an agenda that actually is going to make a difference for everybody, both within the school, both for teachers, for the community, and we're trying to develop and grow these citizens who are going to go out there and think a little bit more about what they do and what they say and the impact that it has on people. So for me, it's a no-brainer. If as a head teacher of a school, of a teaching and research school, as a head teacher who's really passionate about a knowledge-rich curriculum, driving forward empathy, driving forward reading for pleasure, being part of an empathy lab is something that I would not do. I wouldn't not want to do it. It's something that I have to do. I'm compelled to do it because it makes a difference. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I love the idea of that, always thinking about those, growing those citizens of the future, and that what your whole drive being about. I'm not going to be able to ask all the questions and comments on here, but Janetta Otter-Barry has just talked about being a small publisher and having we've got a wonderful poetry book from Janetta Otter-Barry in our Read for Empathy collection this year. Janetta, I wonder if you could unmute and just talk about being part of that Read for Empathy collection. Is she still there, Janetta? Maybe she's dived off or not able to. Okay, we'll go back. So one of the questions that came up right at the beginning of this the chat was around that slide, Miranda, that you were showing at the beginning, which had the cross section of the brain. Do you want to just say a little bit more about that? I don't know if we can reshare the slide because everyone wanted to see it again.
Yes, I saw Ben and Joe's comments about it. Laura, you can probably find it, can't you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Was it that one?
Yeah.
The one.
So, I mean, the body of research, it's really hard to keep up with because there's so much research in this area. And we're, as Robin said, we're hoping to do, if we get his lovely bid that he's got in, we're hoping to be research partners with him to develop that research base. But basically, this thing is about the diagram with fewer arrows. That's what happens in your brain when you hear facts, but when you hear stories, far more areas of your brain light up. And I don't know if many of you are fans of Mary Meyer, but the educationist, she talks about how we underestimate the power of stories in education because they're so enjoyable. We somehow don't take them seriously enough as an educational tool. So basically what this is there's a number of other slides around this, but the basic message is that what happens in your brain when you read a story is that it feels incredibly real. And that's because it's lighting up certain areas of the brain. So if you read the word cinnamon, it will light up the olfactory cortex of the brain, which means that when you identify with feelings and a character's feelings, that feels real. And one of the main researchers in this area says that makes reading like a simulation of the social world, like those flying machines. You know, if you're trying to learn to fly a plane, you can kind of go on a machine that helps you learn, and then you can transfer that learning to real life. So reading a story can be the same for all of us, but particularly for children, to learn how other people work who aren't us. Does that explain it properly?
Yeah. Can I follow up on that, Miranda? Because you have explained it beautifully, and I just want to make the point. And I'm not a neuroscientist myself, but we've got a whole team of people who are doing the neuroscience of empathy, and there is so much to learn here, and there's so much cutting-edge work which is happening. And it comes down to the basic point that actually our brains are incredible. Our capacity to imagine in a very multisensory way is absolutely staggering. And that's what's happening. When you see that diagram and you see all the different parts of the brain that are involved in this, this isn't just about processing one aspect of what you're encountering in a story. It's not just processing the words. It's dealing with the feelings, the relationships, the sights, the smells. You know, when you read a good book and you feel transported into the story, what's happening there is quite magical. And Rashmi made a really great point in the chat just now about what would happen if we actually presented facts with the magic of storytelling. I love that, Rashmi. And I was going to say, this is a really important point, because one of the other oppositions that you sometimes come across here is the idea that somehow empathy is pitted against rationality. The idea that if you're wrapped up in other people's feelings, somehow that's going to inhibit you from making rational decisions. And I hate that idea, because the truth of the matter is that empathy is not pitted against rationality. What we want to do is use our very human capacity to integrate empathy into our rationality, so that when we're using our brains to make really rational decisions, actually we've got empathy giving us the values, giving us the moral orientation, giving us the social stance to be able to make empathetic and rational decisions. It's not one or the other, it's both.
Yay.
I love that. So I think we've probably just got time for one more question before we round up, although I think we could go on for quite a long while looking at the really interesting questions that are and comments that are coming into chat. I've just picked up the one from Ben Harris, which is talking about building empathy through questions rather than telling them. Ben, do you just want to unmute yourself, just say a little bit more about that?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, the sun's just gone right in my eyes there. Yeah, I think that listening to everybody talking tonight with all this about using stories and things, it is really important that we keep those stories going, but also then in our interactions with the children, and that we show them that it's actually something that's practical rather than fictional or a time for story time or whatever. It's actually something we do in real life. And I think the idea of when I'm working with children is, rather than saying you did this or I just saw this happen, I'll ask them, how did you see it through your eyes? What happened there? What was it you were seeing? What was going on with you with this? So I think it's questions rather than telling, so that we can see what they're seeing, and helping us both to sort of come to agreements and understanding, I think.
You're like collaborators in a sort of shared journey rather than didactically telling people. I think that's really powerful. And I think
sorry, go on.
Sorry, no, you carry on, Ben.
I was just going to say, and I find it when I'm reading children stories as well, that when I ask a question, the most fascinating times come up when I ask a question and it's something I never even saw in the story.
Yeah.
And we as teachers maybe think we know what the answers are and we know how the story's going, but actually suddenly you ask questions of children about stories and the whole book turns upside down. You never read it the same again, which is amazing.
Absolutely, I think that's so true. And I think one of the things that we talk a lot in an Empathy Lab around empathy book talking, and Aidan Chambers is a kind of a bit of a guru on book talking, as we know, but one of the things he said that really resonates with me is that the child who's read the book is the expert. It's not you, it's the child, and actually it changes the power balance completely, and I think that's a really powerful thing. I think we're done with questions now, but thank you so much for all the chat. Hopefully we can save the chat because I know there was lots in there. And so just to say thank you for me for engaging so well, and please do go on an empathy walk. I saw a couple of you saying you were taking your classes on an empathy walk. We'd love to see loads and loads of empathy walks, so please do that, and I'll hand you back to Miranda.
Lovely, thanks. And we don't just want you to go on walks, we want you to share afterwards as best you can in videos or social posts or whatever, so that we're all sharing in that sort of community of walking. Well, we're up, time is up. We promised to do 45 minutes. Thank you so much to our speakers, to our authors, to everybody. Feels like a lovely kind of warm feeling as we move towards Empathy Day. So please encourage everybody to get our resources and take part, and keep in touch on Twitter or whatever. And we'll sort of hang around if people are wanting to say anything. But feel free to leave if you would like. Thank you very much for coming.